this stage of this picture. Now some people, when I do art fairs, it's really interesting. Some people either love this or they hate it, and they tell me they do. So it's like, sorry, you know. So this is the most fun of the thing, is where I strip off this mask. And what I get is this, I call it kind of the fishbone stage. And everything that I painted with mask saves the white of the paper. And I try to think of, I love creating these rhythm lines. And what I mean by that is I...
What do you get it off?
This is a little, it's a brand new one. It's a little rubber cement lift. It's almost like a piece of crepe sole of a shoe. And I just got this at Dick Blick the other day. So what I do is
Is that watercolor paper?
this is 300, the same paper I'm painting on that other one.
How long do you have to wait for it to dry before you can lift that?
The longer the better. A lot of times what I'll do when I do a big one, I'll dry it overnight. But I painted the masking on it about noon today, and then I painted the acrylic on it about 1 or 2 this afternoon. And so I'm really safe. The tricky thing about it is it's the acrylic that's sitting on top of the mask, because the acrylic that's on the paper dries through the air and dries down the paper. But it's the acrylic on top of the thing that has to air dry. And boy, if you get impatient and you rub and streak that acrylic across it just because you're impatient. But a lot of people didn't know that this mask works with acrylic. And you can actually put fairly thick acrylic down and it will tear right on that mask line. So I'll paint on this for a little bit. But a really good example is that one over on the far left with the water.
Could you bring that up and put it on the mirror so they could see it?
Yeah. So this is essentially the same kind of step without the canoe. But what I did was I masked everything. Everything that's dark in this picture is acrylic. Everything that's light is transparent watercolor. So my sky is transparent watercolor, and my water is transparent watercolor, and all this dark over here is acrylic. Now this is a print of it, but you can still see the transparency and the opacity of it. And you can see, I actually mixed kind of a turquoise green with matte medium and obliterated this whole bottom, and I made the painting work because there was too much detail down here. So then it's just a matter... It's just a matter of me painting right over the top of this acrylic, and the acrylic stays put. People always ask me, well, can't you do it with watercolor? And it's like, well, you can, but I've got the freedom, to just go right over the top, and that acrylic's not going to move. So then I'm going to kind of just start to tint this in.
How did you decide where to put your mask?
Just, you've got to be how does an artist decide anything? You know, when I first started it, I would mask everything, and it was all little things, and I like a little size variation. I like to have some masses of acrylic and some smaller areas. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's just, the more I do, kind of the more intuitive. And
Is this hot pressed or cold pressed?
it's hot press, and a lot of times I like to work on cold press illustration board. Irving Shapiro did a lot of beautiful paintings of waterfalls and stuff, and I always remembered I tried to paint like him, and it wasn't until I saw that he painted on cold press illustration board, and then as soon as I did that, they looked like his. Because cold press illustration board, watercolor board, you can stack up the darks and they don't get inky looking. So the fun part about this is just kind of almost like a coloring book. At this point is I'm just kind of coloring things in, and I'm still treating it as a watercolor, And if I don't like something, I can let it dry, I can mask more areas. This I thought might have been a nice little green tree. But it's amazing how it just kind of starts to take shape. Now this is fairly simple, but you can kind of get the concept of what I'm doing. And I've really never seen anybody, I've seen a million people use mask, but not like kind of a woodcut like this. But I love the fact that you can paint right over, huh?
Did you mask that sky or did you just leave that?
I mask just the edge.
Oh,
I used to mask everything, but I know now that I don't want to paint my acrylic out in there because that's going to be sky.
Same on the bottom?
Same on the bottom. But I really like to pour my mask in a cup, and after I'm done painting it, I pour it right back into the bottle. I hate trying to stick a brush into the bottle. What's happening here is, instead of me painting a little white shirt on a line with masking fluid, I'm not concerned about what I'm masking, I'm concerned about the shape between my masking, this negative shape. I want the hard edge. In a traditional watercolor painting, masking is, the bad thing about masking is you get such a hard edge. But those people are painting the positive shape. This way I want the hard edge. So when I paint on location, I never use mask. The last way I paint. This one is completely opposite. I'm wanting the hard edge. So I want to just show you one other little thing, and then I'm gonna. Oh, we're in pretty good shape. So, and I also love when a line is dark against light and switches over to light against dark. If a birch tree or a telephone pole is light against dark, and then it comes up into the light sky, and then it switches over and is dark against light. And I always love to see that, I can't think of Ron Ransom used to call that like countercharge. And I try to do that in every painting. I always try to have something that passes from one thing to the other, and you have to plan ahead just a little bit to do it, but it's worth it. Okay, and then let me show you again real quickly. See, I think, some people have seen this and say, well, that's real gimmicky, that's kind of a little trick and everything, but I actually love it's essentially drawing to me. It's just a different line I'm creating. And other people have asked me, why would you go to so much work to get that? And it's like, why does anybody do anything?
Yeah.
Why does a woodcut artist go to all that work to remove everything that's not a tree in a little house? Because it looks cool, and it justifies the end. Now, this is kind of going together quickly, and it's pretty colorful. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll neutralize areas. And I'll start to, this is all fairly bright. And so I can tone things down. I can decide where I want my thing to read more. But I wanted to show you just that right there, toning that down a little bit and knocking some color out of it is kind of cool. So what I do is when I paint acrylic, I have a big jug of matte medium. I love matte medium. And I always start out with a big gloop of matte medium. And so on my trees, for example, usually I wait for things to dry out a little bit. Here's sap green, and Quin burnt orange, which is just a wonderful color. That's that color there that I've got, is Quin burnt orange. So I take my same brush. A lot of these pictures, they all have the same width stroke, and it kind of looks again like I'm kind of creating a little bit of a woodcut. So let me just show you here. So I mixed a little sap green and this Quin, and I'm just going to kind of still paint in that same kind of thinking about almost like a stylized woodcut type of a, so this is my, so I'm kind of painting, a lot of times I like to paint this green and I almost paint a lot of this red out, but it's there and it glows. The thing that's so neat about this style is it gets me into this wonderfully abstract mode. And you can see now how I've changed the value. Maybe that trunk. I think it's going to be up in here or something.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said, at the beginning, you said you paint opposite of what you want. So is that, on this one, you don't want the red, you're gonna cover it? Is that what you meant by that?
No, I kind of meant, I wanted this red shape, the silhouette of the trees, so instead of painting the red silhouette of the trees, I painted everything that wasn't red silhouette of the trees. So I keep painting the negative shape, and then I'm surprised by the positive shape.
Are you putting matte medium on your brush as well as the paint?
Yeah, and sometimes I will almost paint with, I'll show you, I'll mix like 90% matte medium and 20% pigment. And I'll do some things like that where I can get some transparency. Now, the thing that's neat about it is you can really handle it kind of like watercolor. But, I mean, this is really hard. This is such a kind of a time-consuming style. I get to this thing where I push and pull, and I look at it, and I stand back from it, and I'm like, you know, I need more of this dark down here. And a lot of times these paintings, I'm unhappy with them right until the very end, and then they click and they come together. So, you know, because there's kind of a, this is kind of the colors and things right here, and this particular little sample are a little alarming, but some of the ones behind me were the same way, and they came together, so somehow I was able to save them. But I always think, you know, what I end up doing at the ends of paintings is I end up simplifying, I end up consolidating, I end up mixing matte medium with a color and painting out a whole third of the painting to eliminate detail. I almost always find myself eliminating detail with this style. So, but again, with this matte medium, it's wonderful because I can obliterate something if I don't like a particular thing. I can just wipe it out. But it's kind of a cool thing. If you looked at these Canadian guys, it's just incredible. Now I talked about action lines with this last thing I was doing. The action line on this one's really coming right down the middle. You know, maybe I eliminate some of this detail and tie this together. I'd like to tie this whole thing together, but I love the, I'm going to set this aside for just a little bit. You got a sense of how I start to build these up. And I always call that first stage kind of the fishbone stage. I want to just do a little, I want to show you a little bit something on this. It's kind of neat. Well, oh, this one almost looks better. Let's see, I'll do it on this one. So I've got this little red canoe. You see it here, red canoe with the thing. Now I love to find so I've got these little rhythm lines coming through here, and I'll find those in the picture, and if you actually come up and look at it, you can see those things, and I almost think of like a treble clef, or this wonderful rhythmic thing, and I make it very subtle, but there's still this wonderful kind of movement and arcs and rhythms to this. And, you know, if you look at the bird, you're gonna have to look through those. I mean, the neck comes down, and I carried the lines past. I loved all the different arcs. Sometimes I would stop it on the bird, sometimes I would continue it. Sometimes the curve of the neck carries right out into the thing. I mean, it truly is a piece of stained glass window. And there's no, the rules are off. You know, there'd never be a line right here in the background that goes right into the thing, but I'm not creating deep space. This is two-dimensional decorative art. And so anything goes. Okay, that was kind of crazy. I know it's a little schizophrenic, but you can see this bottom right here. What I did is I took a dark green and I mixed it with matte medium, and I had all this stuff going on, and I kind of just painted out the whole bottom, but there's still some of that stuff that's able to come through, and it's a wonderful step. If you've never really used acrylic, to just use a lot of matte medium, you can really lay some wonderful glazes up. That's what Karen does. Karen Knudsen does some wonderful abstract art. I'm trying to think of the other woman. Pure white hair, great personality. Lana Grow, oh my gosh. She does the same thing. She uses matte medium and just builds up these veils and these glazes and creates this wonderful dimension. Okay, let me just do a little bit more on this other painting. I'm going to paint on it for just 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. And you can come up and see some of this other stuff closer. So I'll just finish this. Just put a couple finishing touches on it and be done. So the water's pretty light. I'm not going to monkey too much with the water. I think I'm going to try to get a couple nice just brush strokes down here on this beach, and then just throw in a little detail, and then almost call it done. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get just a... Okay. Nice to lose that.